2008 was a great year. It was my 50th birthday. Both my children were settled. Oliver was finishing his degree. Jessica was embarking on a great musical career, and they were not living at home anymore, and life was really good. Things changed. Towards the end of the year, I came home from work, and then I went through the kitchen into the hallway and discovered glass everywhere and saw a person leaving through the front door. It was dark and the person had very dark clothes on, and I was just totally rooted to the spot. I can't explain what kind of thoughts were going through my head. I do remember thinking, there's people in the house and these are not nice people. And I stood in the hall, not able to move. I never thought that it would have such a big effect on me. I was very nervous returning home in the evenings, and suddenly that peaceful, comfortable situation that I'd always felt returning home had been taken away from me, and I felt quite cross about that. And I got a phone call from the police telling me that they'd caught the person who'd burgled the house and that he'd admitted to several other burglaries and was going to be sentenced and go to prison for quite a while. I was very relieved. Suddenly I thought, great, I can deal with this now, that's sorted. My daughter came round that evening, Christmas Eve, and I told her that they'd caught the burglar and that he'd left a message for us because the police had taken him round all the jobs that he wanted to be taken into consideration, and they pulled up outside our house and he'd said, yes, I remember this one, I remember doing this particular job. Can you tell the family that I didn't mean them any harm and I wish them a happy Christmas? So I delivered this message to my daughter and she said, oh, bless him. And we just looked at her and said, what are you talking about? She said, well, you don't know anything about him. You don't know the reasons why he wanted to do this particular job, why he was involved in this kind of behaviour. You know, you don't know anything about him. And we just said, well, get real, Jessica. You know, this is our home, and he's taken things from us that really are very personal, and quite honestly, I'd like them back. And she just said, well, you've got to move on, Mum, and just think about that person's circumstances. And we did. We moved on. We were getting ready for a family wedding, and we went to the wedding, and it was a glorious day, the best day of the whole summer. We were really lucky, and we went to the wedding, all of us. Jess was there with her boyfriend Tom, and they left the wedding at the end of the afternoon to come home to get changed into some casual clothes for the evening. And a friend came and picked them up who wasn't at the wedding, and when they were going back to the house to get changed, they had a car accident and all three of them were killed. One of the things that really impacted on us as a family was the fact that we'd lost things that we suddenly needed. That burglar had taken things from our house that we needed very, very definitely at that moment in time. One particular object was the laptop that he'd stolen, and on there were lots and lots of photographs that we hadn't had the time to back up. So they were gone, and I suddenly needed those. I needed to see the pictures of Jessica's 18th, I needed to see pictures we'd taken at my 50th birthday. I needed them. I needed her jewellery that we bought for her 18th and her 21st. And it was suddenly, you know, who had the right to take something away from me when I'd lost everything? You know, it's the biggest loss you can ever experience, losing a child, and then not having those things which would have brought some comfort. My world fell apart. My husband's world fell apart, and my son's did. But we got through the next few days, and we got through the funeral, and just as I was preparing myself to go back to school, and this was only about a week after the funeral, we received a phone call from the police asking us if we'd like to take part in a restorative justice case conference. Suddenly, the words of Jessica about the fact that we didn't know this person and we didn't know what made him tick, we didn't know what made him behave in this way, came into my head, and I thought, I've got to know a little bit more about this. I was very angry, I was very resentful and bitter. And so the very next day, we went to prison. He shuffled into the room. His head was down. There was no eye contact, and he sat down opposite me. And he looked at the floor, and he just eventually said, I just want to say I'm really sorry for what I've done. I'm sorry for the harm I've caused. I asked him to look at me, and it took some doing, and it was very difficult for him to actually look at me and maintain some eye contact. And I said, you said telling me you're sorry. What are you sorry about? Well, I'm sorry for taking the things I took from you. And I said, well, not half as sorry as I am. I suddenly felt that I had this inner strength, and my voice became stronger, and I asked him lots of questions. I asked him if he looked at the photographs in the house, if he got some idea of the family that lived there. And he said, no way, you don't do that. You do the whole thing in neutral. If you start thinking and feeling, you can't do it. I then asked him about the laptop, more specifically, and I said, how much did you get for the laptop? And he said, I can't remember at all. I said, well, I need to know. And he said, well, why do you need to know? I said, it's important to me to know how much you got. And he said, £35. I said, you sold all my memories for £35. And I then explained to him that we'd just lost our daughter. And he was absolutely gutted. That's when I became very, very angry. And I really, really laid into him and said, you've taken things from me that I need. I need them now. And that's the reason why I'm here today. And the whole thing became very, very emotional. And we started to talk then as two human beings. And it was the most life-changing experience. I don't think I've ever felt as exhausted, as drained, but suddenly in a different place. And I just felt totally different. And this person sitting opposite me was no longer that beast of a person that I'd feared for so long. He was just a person with his own story to tell. Since then, things have just moved on and on and on, and it's been the start of a journey for both me and Ian, the offender. I'm now getting to know Ian so much better. He's released from prison now. He's been out of prison for over 2 years. The longest he ever did in the past, when he came out of prison, was about, well, he's usually reoffended. He'd usually offended again within 3 to 4 weeks. He says it's all to do with our meeting and the fact that he suddenly thought, what am I doing? You know, what is this about? Why am I doing this? And it's not about giving the things back that you've stolen or making things better in a particularly physical way. It's about that person just listening and understanding the impact that they've had on somebody. And that is so empowering, to be able to say, this is what you did, this is how you made me feel, what are you going to do about it? And I haven't got my head round whether I forgive Ian. There are some days when I don't, because I think, no, I can't forgive your actions. I'll never forgive his actions. I'll never forgive the fact that he's taken things that are mine and he got very, very little money for them. So he didn't, and the money he got for them, he used to feed his drug habit. So I don't forgive him for any of that. But I forgive him as a person, as a human being, for making the huge effort to prove to me and his family that he can change his life, he can turn his life around.